Hello, you multi. Massive markups make Macallan merchants. Ooh, a controversial malt mention, that one, for all of you with the whisky knowledge. And a thank you to Undiluted Ryan. It is Undiluted Ryan, that's what it is. For that malt mention, introducing Ralphie Review 980 here in the Bothy with a single malt Scotch whisky, which is what I specialise in terms of reviewing, with a little bit of a deep dive. No point being too superficial about it, because, you know, whiskey's too expensive to give you just some superficial feedback. We need to go a little bit deeper so as to give you some value content. So, are you sitting comfortably? Perhaps you've got a wee glass of bourbon or whiskey or brandy in your glass, in your hand, because it's already in the glass. So let's fire away. Let's get stuck into it. I'm reviewing a Knock 18-year-old. It's a single malt whisky from Knock Dhu Distillery, which is a relatively small distillery on the east side of the Speyside region, and is often described as a Highland whisky, because when you have distilleries around the edge of the Speyside region, and all of Speyside region borders Highland region, that's the fact of it, you can have this misunderstanding, particularly when you're smelling and tasting the whisky, that, you know, why is this from Speyside, which is supposed to be rounded and juicy and sweet and very palatable, when in fact it tastes more like a Highland whisky? Well, that's one of the reasons, is that distilleries around the borders, including Glen Moray, another good example, and they are in fact more Highland in style than Speyside in style. And this situation is further confused by some distilleries who are definitely in the Speyside region and definitely making a Speyside style of whisky, describing themselves as Highland. Macallan does that. But anyway, let's get focused on this single malt here from Knock Dhu Distillery. It's consistently decent. It's a whisky that I come back to every couple of years, and I buy another bottle just to catch up with it, because 9 times out of 10, in fact 10 times out of 10 so far, it's been well worthwhile. It is slightly peated. It isn't super smooth, which is another attractive thing about this whisky. It's pretty well made, and the delivery to the market by the producers is mercifully free of pretentiousness. So you will not find a Knock being associated with non-fungible tokens or bored apes. You will not find 101 permutations, versions, and finishes, cask finishes, with a Knock. It's a delightfully old school, simple presented, decent single malt at an attractive price that's widely available, that is consistently decent, and by many whisky drinkers it's overlooked. And I know that a Knock has its own secret following, so I hope that you secret followers will not be put off by the fact that I'm bigging up a Knock and recommending people to buy it, because within the whisky scene you've always got some people who are fans of specific distilleries because they're not on other people's radars. They're not either promoted or talked about as sort of pedestal malts like Macallan for one reason or Springbank for another reason. So, let's start with the fact that it's bottled at 46%. Little slip there. Soon rectified, very quickly rectified. 46% unchill filtered, natural colour. It says it on the label. It says it on the box. It tells you about the name of the distillery itself and its style. This presentation is simple, practical, honest, and free of disingenuous, space-filling flannel, which unfortunately is becoming an increasing problem with some brands who are trying to distract their, what they call the consumer, away from the core quality of what they should be selling. So let's start with the nose here. Wonderfully malty. You've got this kind of sweet malt, dried fruit, and a strong sweet and sour on the nose. You will find with experience that although initially you don't pick up sensations in the nose so well as you do actual flavours like vanilla and toffee and chocolate, given time and experience, your nose will pick up on the sensations which are part of the flavour of the malt. And what does it taste like? By the way, this is one I poured half an hour ago. It really needs time to breathe. It's a robust single malt. Even at 18 years old, it's a little bit edgy. To some experienced drinkers, it's even a little bit rough. But I assure you, this is very well made whiskey. It's being honest with you. It is a little bit robust. It is well made, robust whiskey, and once you get used to it, you'll really appreciate the transparency of the signature that you're getting. Really well put together casks. First thing that strikes you is the quality of the wood. It's Spanish oak, ex-sherry casks. It's natural colour. That is natural colour. That comes from the tannins in the wood and a little bit from the previous content. But we're dealing with a European oak source, which is different from American oak, as in used in bourbon, because it's got a lot less vanilla. It's got more dried fruits about it. And those dried fruits have integrated superbly well into the single malt. Neat. You could drink it neat, 46%. It's quite complex and it kind of reveals itself without you even needing to add anything in the way of water. It's just part of the characteristic of this whiskey. It's the sensation hits you first. Sweet and sour, big sweet, big sour. Beautifully assimilated. Then you get the dried fruits. Some apricot conserve, figs, there's a distinct fig note. Some people may even find a date note. There's a brown muscovado note as well, definitely. Raisin, sour raisin, interestingly enough. The development is decent enough. The finish is a little bit simple. And this is where we're going to add the water. You will find with experience that you never add all your water at once. You add it a little at a time and you build it up till you find pitch perfect in your experience. And it is your experience, nobody else's. So I've added 5 millilitres of water to this. Very soon you will start to see this single malt, and I'll show you it now, go a little bit cloudy as the Scotch mist appears, confirming the fact that the producers are claiming they've non-chill filtered the whiskey, and in fact they have not chill filtered the whiskey, which is wonderful stuff. While it's kind of settling down a little bit more information about Anauch. At the moment it's available in 3 forms, so there's not a lot of range of choice, partly because there doesn't need to be, because of the simplicity of delivering the brand to market and to basically diminish customer confusion, because that's the joys of having just a few standard stock options which really don't change, apart from the consistency, is that you don't start to dilute the message of the brand signature by having too many different permutations of your bottle. Because as time goes on, some of them turn out to be successful and others are not. They're disappointing, particularly when you're doing when you're doing special finishes like red wine finish, white wine finish, Tokai finish, Bordeaux finishes, the fancy finishes. There's the 12, there's the 18, and there's the 24. The 24 is a magnificent whisky. It really is. But the price has jumped up considerably recently. It's jumped up about 20%, but it has been up until recently one of the best bargain older single malts available in the market. The initial cheapest entry level is the 12-year-old. It is bottled at 40% and it is chill filtered and is basically reflected in the price, the delivery. So you have this basic introductory offer from the distillery, which is really designed more for first timers, for the passive consumer who wants to taste and try, but is a little bit frightened of the intensity of delivery of flavour that you get at 46% integrity bottling, meaning that chill filtration, non-chill filtration, and particularly with natural colour, it's there. But when you're just starting out, it's not really that important because you're having your first experience. The price of the 12-year-old is very competitive in the UK. I highly recommend it to you as a gift for someone who thinks they don't drink whisky. It's really consistently, this is the key here, it's consistently good. So you don't get these bottle variation issues that you do get with some other brands. Occasionally they'll bring out a special one. At the moment they've got a 35-year-old, which is rather hard to find and rather expensive. But look out in auctions for the 16-year-old 125th anniversary edition. That is a really, really fine single malt whisky. Unpretentious, unfussy, unfinished, unflannelled, honest to goodness single malt Scotch. And my goodness, we need more of that. We really do. So I've left this about five minutes or so. I'd conclude by saying with Anok that I've done 6 reviews of this whisky over the years. There's been a kind of quite a separation between the reviews, but I do always come back to it. And my last review was Ralphie Review 879 back in May of 2021, just as the pandemic lockdown was kicking in. And it hasn't been that long when you think about it. I'm coming back to it again. And the reason I'm reviewing this for a third time is simply that I just want to refresh your calibration with Scotch whisky. That there are good value whiskies which don't feel the need to have a whole load of hype and flannel and dramatic price increases in order to get people's attention. And my advice is, when you see a dramatic price increase in any single malt, sure, it's more expensive to make these days, but also the other reason is that distillers are being greedy. So just don't buy it. Look around, check the shelves, do your homework, go online, watch a Ralphie review and find another option. You can buy this as an integrity presentation 18-year-old single malt Scotch whisky for less than £100 a bottle in the UK as of the moment that I'm recording this review, which is in June 2023. Now we've added some water. Let's have another spin of the wheel here. The nose has really settled down. It's become much more elegant. The raisins are prominent. There's less of a fig note. The dried fruit, there's a whole bundle of dried fruits going on in there. There's a little bit of a cola note, a sort of slightly black cherry note as well. There's a hint of, no, I wouldn't call it plain chocolate, but I would call it regional chocolate. Madagascan plain chocolate, but not that plain. Well, it's the reference I'm getting. You'll find your own references with practice. Taste. A much more elegant arrival. Beautifully aromatic, perfumed, long arrival. Then you get this wonderful lemon oil and lemon juice. And it seems to be mixed with some other citrus. I think it's grapefruit, but there's something else going on there. It could be a 3 citrus fruits altogether, giving that delicious, refreshing, zesty note to it as it develops. It develops with soft toffees, with fudge, little fudge notes, with a more mild coffee, but less chocolate than you were getting in the nose. And it just fades so gently into the finish, which is slightly tannic, fresh tannins, and strong notes of really decent quality Spanish oak, proper Spanish oak. These are really well sourced casks, and this is what you get with a good whisky. You get well-made spirit matured in well-made casks, sourced with well-sourced wood. So when you have this accumulation of all good quality ingredients, you inevitably get good quality results. But with this one we get a little bit more, because along with those results, I'm just going to add a little bit of water here, because I want to get the Scotch mist popping out a little bit more to let you see it. That's coming along nicely. You get this slight robust fizzy note with a knock. Now, for a knock regulars, I would say that the newer versions are sweeter. They are definitely sweeter. And they're a little bit more, there's a little less depth, shall we put it that way, coming from the casks. But this is really a reflection of two things: of the wood sourced for modern casks in Europe, because there's so much regulation and red tape around it now. What can be harvested, where it can be harvested, and when it can be harvested. And also our own palates. You see, the more we spend time with one particular brand of single malt, the more we get to know. It's just like getting to know a new friend. The more time you spend with them, the better you get to know them. And at that point, you get to know them warts and all. And the warts here are it's just a little bit edgy, a little bit rough around the edges. But in fact, you will find eventually, as you get to spend a bit of time with it, that it just gives it character more than anything else. It isn't a stellar single malt whisky. You know, it's not designed to be. It's not reflected in the price, and it's not reflected in the reputation. But I tell you what, the consistency, the integrity, the honesty, this goes so far at this moment in time. So I highly recommend a Knock 18-year-old to you. We're going to give this a mark. Of course we are. Going to give it a malt mark. Going to give this a nice juicy quality 83 out of 100, and that, maltsters, is a malt mark. Malt 83. That's a good mark. Anything over 75 is relatively competent whisky. Anything over 80 and above is good whisky. It's good, it's worth it, as long as you're not overpaying. Now finally, let's have a look at this glass again. Can you see the Scotch mist? There's a haze growing in this glass. And it's important that I bring this to your attention, because you will find, and I know Ralphie regulars, you'll immediately pick up on what I'm saying here. You will. You will find that some distillers will state on the labels of their bottles that they do not chill filter their whisky, and yet when you pour it into the glass and you add water and you make an effort to keep it cool, so you maybe sit your glass in another glass of cold water. It's a great way of keeping your whisky cool in a hot climate. Wonderful way. So simple. You put a wee bit of ice in it too, crushed ice. Keeps your whisky cool, although Got to get rid of the drips when you lift the glass out. You'll find that some distillers, they claim they're non-chill filtering their whisky, and yet after 15-20 minutes and you've added water and it's still relatively clear. Why is that? Well, it's very easy for you to work out for yourself. And I'm not going to be overly controversial about it. It's just a shame that there is a culture in the Scotch whisky industry which is economical with the full picture. I think actually I handled that very diplomatically, don't you think? Because bear in mind, I'm going to conclude by saying, and that's my opinion. It's my opinion. And particularly as you get more experienced and you get more into the social side and the networking around whisky, it becomes much more visible, much more obvious. Now, I hope you're going to pop back again soon, because I'm going to have another review. It's going to be Ralphie Review 980 Extras. And an extras review is where I'm not specifically reviewing a single malt or any other spirit. I'm talking more generally to provide my experience and my knowledge so far, because my journey's not over for a few years yet. Fingers crossed, touch wood. And I'm just going to give you some knowledge, and it's called The 7 Stages of Whisky. Right, the 7 stages. It's like the 7 pillars of wisdom, or the 7 layers of enlightenment. So we're going to have the 7 stages of whisky. So I'll be telling you all about that, and if you want to know when the video is up and running on YouTube, well, why don't you click subscribe if you haven't, and bang on the bell so you get notified, hopefully, because I know some of my subscribers do not get notified when I put up a new video, and that's just the way it is. I'm not surprised. It's real life. I just got on with the show. On with the show. In the meantime, it's time for me to go. See you soon, malt mates. Red clicker. Gotta say bye-bye. Bye-bye.